Hi, evening everyone. Welcome to those that have already logged in. We're just waiting for kind of people to come on board. Got a grand total of around about 100 people hopefully joining us this evening, which is great. So we'll just wait a few moments for everyone to be able to log on. Something really exciting about seeing the numbers going up. Just over 50 now.
Takes when we need more elevator music, isn't it?
Yeah, we should get some intro music. So we'll wait another few moments and then we'll get going. So it's about 7:31, so we'll get cracking and then anyone who can join us after can kind of catch up on us. So welcome everyone. It feels like a long time since we did a webinar, but it was only a little while ago and a lot's changed since then. So we thought we'd come up and see you again this evening and just give you a quick snapshot of the national picture. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Natalie Weir. I'm England Development Officer, and with us tonight we've also got Jules Hanvey from Northern Ireland and also Rick Gamble from Northern Ireland Development Officers there, and they're going to be contributing to the webinar. We've also got a fabulous panel of club volunteers who are going to talk us through their club examples, and that's the main focus of this evening, to kind of hear from them, to hear about their club examples, from their experiences of returning to traditional orienteering events over the last few weeks, to those that have really embraced the virtual orienteering and those that can combine both. And they're going to talk through kind of their positive and negative experience, and hopefully that'll be an opportunity for those along the way to ask questions. For those of you that are new to our GoToWebinar system, you cannot speak, but there is a little question bit on your dashboard to the right hand side of your screen, and at any point during the session you can type your little questions away, whether it's to one of us, one of the club representatives who are speaking, and we'll do our best to kind of ask those questions and intercept and kind of ask those as we go along. We've got a jam-packed session, so I'll crack straight over. Oh, hello. But yeah, I'll crack straight over to Rick, who's going to present to us and give us the national picture from the British orienteering perspective. Okay, thanks.
Brilliant. Good evening, everyone. I just really want to share two things with you. Key findings from analysis of data which BOF or British Orienteering has collected on events, permanent orienteering courses, and the MapRunF virtual orienteering course data. I also want to share some key findings from recent event surveys which were sent to club officials and participants. Hopefully you can see my screen here. So the key findings from the recent data analysis, I'm looking at local and regional events, also the permanent orienteering courses and virtual orienteering courses, which is, we don't have the data for all the GPS usage platforms, but I do have the MapRunF one, which is the most widely used one. So looking at local events, first of all, comparing August and September this year with the same period last year, we sort of have good news and bad news, and you can see, I'm not going to maybe read all the data out because you can read it for yourselves, hopefully. So in red is the bad news. For example, the number of local events is down from 102 to 59. That's August, September. So August the 1st obviously was a time when orienteering was able to resume again, and the participation is down from 8,592 to basically 50% of that, 4,310. But there's been a great increase from August to September of over 300%. And September recovery is basically sitting at 66%, so 2/3 of it was last year. So although we're down, there has been a big recovery in September. Local events participation in 2019, the average was 53, and the average number of participants now is 69. So it has gone up by 30%. So there is an appetite for a return to local events. So moving on to regional events. Again, the bad news, the number of regional events is down from 30 to 8, and the average participation is up again, so it's the good news. So again, because people maybe have been absent from orienteering, they're keen to get back, the actual average has gone up to 20%. Moving on to permanent orienteering courses, because there's been a lot of effort, I know clubs have put in a lot of effort with regarding just putting on activities and events for their members, and it's been fantastic to see that. Permanent orienteering courses, the downloads for June to September are up 59% compared to the same period in 2019. So participation has risen by 52%. And you can see there the downloads for August and September, so just the last 2 months. That's not correct, that data actually. So there's a missing figure in there, so sorry, apologies for that. Let me see if I can find that exact. I'll get back to you. I'll change. Whenever we send the slides out to you, I'll change that third point of permanent orienteering courses, so apologies for that. Virtual orienteering courses, so this is the map run F stats. So between May and June this year, participation went up, basically 4.5 times more participants from between May and June. So 716 in May to 3,246 in June, when there was a big push for from us to get people out and trying new things. July saw a further increase, reaching a peak of 4,415 participants, and participation numbers have remained high in August and September. Moving on to key findings from surveys. So we wanted people to share their experience of their return. So we sent a survey out to event officials and also to participants. Some of the barriers for returning which came up. So again, some of the bad news or some of the negatives. Event officials highlighted 2 main barriers. First of all was access, which is probably a problem all year round, but particularly now, and it will continue to be. We appreciate that. And also the additional work required to maybe put on a COVID-safe event. But I think clubs now would probably say once you've set it up once, you have things in place, and it's not so bad. The second or third or whatever, how many times clubs have put on events. But certainly the club I'm involved with, we've had 3 events now, and it was a wee bit more work for the first one. But I think things are in place, signs are there, and people know what, guest participants know what's happening, I suppose, more now. The main reason for participants not returning was the club hadn't actually put on an event yet, which is obvious. Looking at health and well-being, that was something we looked at, and it's something which I know sports bodies and government are interested to find out about the effects on our health and well-being. The event official survey, basically they weren't overly concerned about being able to create a safe environment for their volunteers. They believe that there was things in place, and the guidance which British Orienteering was able to provide them was clear and helpful for that. And the participant survey, only a small fraction said they'd not returned to orienteering because of their concerns with the transmission of COVID and their health and safety. There's just a small pie chart there, just to show how people felt their health and well-being had changed since their return to orienteering. And you can see there, there's quite a bit of green there, suggesting that 52% said their health and well-being had improved since their return. 31% said there was no change in their health and well-being. Only 1% said it had slightly deteriorated, and nobody said had it greatly deteriorated. But the 16% there, that yellow section, is people who have not yet returned. So that's really all from me, because I want to quickly just highlight that. I'll send that data over. If anybody wants to look at more data, I can provide that to you, so just please get in touch. So I'll hand over back to Nat, and she can introduce our first club presenter. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. And I know we've probably had a lot of stats and stuff going out. So because last week I sent the POC and VOC stats because they're really great to see, actually a reflection of all the good work, like you said, the clubs have been doing. But now we're going to hear from our first club of the evening. And if anyone wants to obviously ask questions as we're going along, like I say, type them in. We've had a few so far and I've tried to answer as we go along. But we're going to hear first from John. He's from West Cumberland Orienteering Club, which is based in the western half of the Lake District. I'm just going to make you presenter, John. He'll come up. And then John is going to take us through how we started their traditional Thursday orienteering events and how they've adapted procedures and entry arrangements. So over to you, John.
Okay. Well, hopefully, let's have a look. Have I shared my screen yet?
Yep, yes. I can see it.
Yep. Okay. So we basically organise events every Thursday. We have a Thursday night series going through the whole of the year with summer events, night events in the winter, sprint events and urban events in spring and autumn around the clock change periods. And as soon as we heard, well, we've been planning some MAPRONEF courses and those are being used quite well. But as soon as British Orienteering said you can start orienteering again, straight in, we wanted to do Thursday night events. So we weren't thinking about, oh, we'll try one, we'll do something here. It was straight in, we want to be putting on our Thursday night events from day one. But to do that, ours are stripped down events. They're not quite O-light, but they are very much designed about being put on by one person doing everything, just about everything for the event, from planning the courses through to putting up the controls, acting as the organizer. Don't require a team of people to do anything. They are designed as very stripped down events. So for us, it had to be simple to understand, simple to implement, and simple to follow the rules that we put in place. So we took quite a long time about putting the risk assessment together and going through how we would do that to keep it simple for the people putting on the events. So we developed our own entry system. We looked at what was there. We sat in on the presentation, the webinar about entry systems, and we came up with we decided that we'd have one of our own. So we had a simple one. So the simple things are, it collects your contact details. Entrance must have an SI card. Started off with entries for a block of 4. We've now dropped it down. We'll be having individual ones for individual events, but we started off with a block of 4 for the month of August. You then select your course you want to run and your time slot in accordance with the 10 to 15 minutes. But we don't take payments, and payments then requested afterwards by BACS transfer, which makes it nice and simple. And we're used to paying for things like coaches and other things that we do within the club by BACS transfer, so that makes it quite simple. And we started off offering a small discount for members who entered all 4 events. And the planner can print out the sheet, which gives you the name of all the people, what their start blocks are. So it becomes his checklist when people arrive to say, yes, you've entered. Have you got no symptoms, whatever, tick on the box. It's all done. That was nice and simple. For the first thing, part of the discussion was what areas would be available to us. I mean, we've got a lot of information about, what National Trust are doing, what Forestry England are doing, what they're allowing people to do. So we then chose our first 4 areas with that knowledge. Because we had now the entry system, maps we could decide how many maps to print, select the number on the preceding Sunday, so they're printed, and then you can print a little bit of a surplus, allocate them to start blocks that had space available, allowing people to then continue entering up until the night. So no SI cards available for hire. but we allowed a loan system. So if you want to take part and you haven't got one and you're a member of the club, we can loan you one at no cost for the duration of the period when we are going to be in these restrictions. Let's have a look. So we keep the club kit's kept in a brick shed at one of our members' properties, and we have a big tray with the boxes and everything in. So everything's in there. We decided what additional equipment we needed to put in. So doubling up starts, clear boxes, etc., like that. Putting in the hand sanitizer and all those sorts of things. And the only thing that we needed really special procedures in place or arrangements in place for is the download. And we only use one of the downloads connected straight to the printer. We don't use a laptop on a Thursday night, so that keeps it nice and simple. And the first aid kit, we've got a member who's in the mountain rescue, Cockham Mountain Rescue team. All through the pandemic, they've been putting in place all the arrangements they need for doing first response to an injury or someone. So we took advice. What do we need to include in our rucksack that we have at our events for first aid? So all at the event, all competitors check in. There's hand sanitizer at the check-in station, no money handled, all payments post the event. The organizer hands the map to the competitor, so there's only one person touching each map, that's the organizer, and he's got all the hand sanitizer anyway. So you don't have people going in the box and reaching around or trying to take them out of a plastic bag and touching other maps. So it's all simple. I say no SI hire available. 2 separate starts, which is what we had to start with. I think under the latest restrictions or the latest changes in restrictions, we can now have a single start because they've increased the number of people that can start on any particular start. And we don't give out the splits printout. That's kept separately, so no one's trying to tear off a piece of paper, touching the download box or anything like that. So experience to date, we've had 9 events over the 11 Thursday nights. We had 4 in August, 4 in September, and we've had 1 so far in October. The arrangements have worked very well. We've had no complaints on the COVID-19 arrangements. There's been a clear desire to get back to orienteering, as I think we've heard from some of the participation numbers that came out earlier. In August, we saw a much better attendance than we did in previous years, which could be due to weather as much as anything, because they were, we had good nights. But as I say, we had 303 runs in August across the 4 nights, with an average of 75, just over 75 people per event, compared to 264 across the 4 August events last year. So we're seeing a bit of an upturn there. And going on, we've seen members from 15 different clubs in August. It's dropped back in September because people aren't coming to Cumbria to go on holiday. And the maximum we had was members from 10 different other clubs at one of our events at Low Rig. In September, we've had 235 separate runs, which is averaging at 59 an event, which I say is slightly down on last year. Having said that, if you take off the 27 rainbows and brownies we had at one of the events last year, and they like to come along to one, but they haven't done this year, we break even, we're about the same number. And actually, the bottom line is we've now got a higher membership this year by 2 people than we had last year. At the end
That's
of
fantastic, John. And one question that's come in actually from Fiona, she asks, so how many members, how big is your club? How many members is it generally, just so we can understand the scale?
We fluctuate either side of 200. Last year we were right on 200. This year we're now just topped at 202. The year before.
Yeah, so and you've been letting newcomers, Ian says you've been allowing newcomers, have you, to your Thursday nights?
Well, we've not. I say we've said that people must be a member of British Orienteering, and they must have an SI card or be a member of the club and have requested an SI club card. So to register to take part in an event, you've got to have an SI card number. So that effectively cuts out that new starter group of people. But we, but yes, if someone came along and joined the club, we would loan them a dibber, but it would be, they'd get it through the post a few days before the event, so that it was all secure by the time they came on the Thursday night to open the envelope and take it out. We'd make sure.
And there's a couple of other questions as well, because Helen just asked, how much out of interest do you charge for your Thursday evening events?
Normal Thursday evening event is £4 for an adult and £2 for a junior.
Okay. And then whilst we're on questions, Jane says, you mentioned when you're talking about the first aid bag, about thinking about what extras you needed to put in there. She says, did you have any extras that you needed to put in there, or what were they, if you can remember?
I can't remember precisely, because the discussion was between various people, including we've got a dentist on the committee, and as I say, someone who's in the Cockermouth Mountain Rescue, but there was a list put together. I mean, one of the things that I hadn't thought about, which I know we put in, there's a mask put in for the patient. So one thing is you have masks in there, so you can actually give the patient a mask as well as the first responder having a mask.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So, because you don't want the transmission coming back on your first responder from a patient who happens to have it, for example, without being, showing symptoms. And it's around having things to hand sanitize. But the other thing was, it's about the procedures. So certain types of resuscitation, we decided you couldn't allow. So you can't do mouth to mouth. It's got to be CPR type if anyone's suffering like that. And also what point do you call out, do you dial your 999 or do you call out other agencies? And I think you bring the point a little bit earlier. So you do less, you get the professionals in sooner. I think it was those sort of points.
Sorry, John, just saying there is some information as well in the British Orienteering guidance on that. So if you want to seek a wee bit of advice on what to do, especially CPR in these times, please look that up. Thank you. Good points, John.
So unless there's anything else, we'll hand over then, John. That was brilliant. And what's great to see is that the number of runs and just shows the enthusiasm that there is out there at the moment. So now, unless you've got anything else you want to say, John?
No, I'm fine.
Fab. So we'll share, as I say, we'll share everyone's slides. So that was a really good example of how you just get stuck right in as soon as the green light was given, crack on, no hesitation, and work around the procedures. So that's great. Thank you. We're going to go on now to Colin, who's from the British Army Orienteering Club, and he's going to give us his experience of the Military League South events. Especially, I thought it'd be really helpful to hear about how they've managed large numbers, 2 or 3 start lanes, and adapted their kind of requirements. So I shall make you presenter now. Colin?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so you just need to accept. That's it. We can see it. Marvellous. Thank you.
All right, good evening all. I'm Colin Dixon, British Army Orienteering Club, and organised the events for Military League South after the restart in August of this year. Returning to orienteering after the lockdown, we restarted on the 5th of August with 8 events around the Aldershot area, with a turnout between 220 and 300 per week. We could have added quite a lot to the 300 if it was permissible. First considerations, of course, in this particular case were the maps. As on visiting the areas, most of the areas had considerable mountain bike and walking, new walking tracks, trails, some quite large during lockdown. So that was a considerable task to get all of the maps back up to a revised date. Extra considerations that we had to put into effect after the guidelines had come out to protect the competitor and the volunteers to make sure they're all safe. For the first event, I had to ask the planner to move the start and the finish so that we were visible to registration and for me to be able to supervise line of sight. It was merely with the potential of 250, 300 people turning up and the rules of 6 and groups of 6, very, very easy to get into a melee. First, we set up a new entry system. This was really, there's brilliant entry systems out there already. The reason we set up this was for our own simplification, so that we could plan and organize within the system, and we could put into effect quickly what happened on the Wednesday afternoon for the Wednesday afternoon league event. We could implement the changes that evening and have it ready for registration that evening at 8 o'clock. The arena, we tried to have the arena laid out the same each week so that the competitors knew what to expect. Where possible, the competitors could see the registration, the toilets, the start, finish, food vendors, and the download from where they were. Hand gel, I decided that although we had told everyone that they were responsible to make sure that they had their own sanitization and hand gel, we also provided that the food vendors registration, start, download, and toilets. This worked exceptionally well. On a couple of occasions, it was had to be supervised, but within the by the time the first week had finished, we had a real roll on it. COVID-19 signs. COVID-19 signs were placed in locations on short posts with a view that everyone could see from any angle they approached. Signs were placed at the car park, the registration, toilets, start and finish. And these were all of the British Orienteering signs that were provided. Volunteer helpers were from many different clubs, as far away as North Gloucester to in the west to in the east to Saxons. All were briefed by email. High-vis vests were provided, and a bag was provided for after use so that they were washed. Controller collectors were provided with hand gel on completion of their collection task. Non-orienteers, helpers, had their emails and their mobile numbers recorded. Entry onto the area, as you will know, on military areas, they have large barriers, so we had to provide a marshal to man that point and to simplify, rather than the marshal having to go over and speak to the person, we simply made up a sign, "Are you orienteering?" And they give the thumbs up, and this reduced the approach to the car, particularly to speaking down to an open window. And this worked very well. In the car park, it was decided to have cars in long lines with passable gaps between. And the reason in the main for this was so that we had a bit more freedom in the size of the car park. It also meant that when the individual got out of the car, they were always more than 2 meters away from another competitor, even if they went to the boot. The challenge was that we had to change 2 of the 8 events as the car parks were too small, and the alternative was to reduce by half the number of competitors or cancel the event. We found 2 additional areas planned, and both events were successful. The car park marshals were provided with orange pointers to reduce the amount of talking, and were told not to approach car windows. Registration download, that was signed with 2 meter gaps between lead flat poles on the ground. And the reason we led them flat on the ground is to avoid people touching. Registration download was set up in a large two-sided van with sliding doors and doors at the back. Registration was from the driver's side door pointing towards the car park. The downloads from the back door pointing towards the finish. The problem door was the passenger side door. All doors were fully protected with perspex. The start evolved from 1 lane to 2 lanes or 3 to allow the throughput of orienteers and allow them to spread onto the area. It required a larger area than normal. This didn't cause much of a problem in any case. Manned at the start of the lane and at the start point. One person at the start to make sure people were going into the correct lanes, the other person at the start post and map box to make sure they were picking up the correct, they were starting for the start correctly and that they were picking up the correct map. In both cases, they were well back or well away from the competitors. Each lane was marked with poles laid flat 2 meters apart, a lane name, course closing time, rule of 6, and keep 2 meters apart. One start kite was provided for all lanes. Courses were planned with a view to avoid narrow paths through, basically through thick fight and vegetation, and certainly to avoid head-ons in narrow areas. This was very successful during the 8 events. The start and finish were planned in wide visible areas, 100 meters from the registration and download, and in each case it was possibly a short way for the organizer to supervise any challenges which may have happened on the ground. Finish and download is placed in a more open area with signs to move away and with sufficient distance away from download to allow the competitor to cool down and to come in without breathing heavy on the download area. Finally, we had over 2,000 competitors in the 8 weeks. We kept learning each week from new lessons. We had 2 compliance checks, both from Army officers, and passed both. And their aim was basically to make sure that we are following British Orienteering and MOD guidelines as we're led down, because it wasn't only British Orienteering guidelines, we also had to go through the process of following MOD guidelines as well. Competitors were regularly asked, did they feel safe when they were back into the car park after they downloaded, which they did. We avoided upright poles as people have a habit of touching upright poles, and we've seen it all in B&Q as they've been queuing outside and the various other places. We found the controlling factor for numbers attending the events was the size of the car park, rather than how many we could get out into the forest. The volunteer team were quite outstanding. We had some people during the 8 weeks, which I organised all 8 weeks, we had some people who had volunteered all 8 weeks. And on some occasions turned up, didn't run, but they still wanted to volunteer. Any questions?
Firstly, huge admiration for obviously the organisation and logistics that have gone into that. There's quite a few little questions for you, Colin. Leanne gives a helpful comment. She says that bear in mind sometimes high-vis jackets only last 25 or so washes, so it might be cheaper to buy frequent volunteers their own high-vis jacket to save the need for washing. That's a food for thought. But Hilary asked a good one. She said, why did you need registration if the events were pre-entry?
Because a lot of people, we were using touch-free, and we don't have touch-free normally. We went with British Orienteering guidelines, so we moved across to touch-free, and to be able to get the touch-free, we had to go up to the van, as it were, to be given touch-free. Hence the reason that we had gel before and after.
And did you still give out splits and stuff, results?
Yes, we did, and that was at the back door. The competitor would come up, they would run their e-tag across the top of the reader. The information would come out. They were told not to touch. They just simply tore it off and walked away.
Okay, get you. And just to clarify that race sign up is available for other clubs if it was an entry platform that they wanted to try as well. Peter Davis has just pointed that out, so thanks, Peter. But yeah, I think that's all, Colin. That was honestly, that to hear about the volume of people and the organisation behind it, yeah, it's admirable. So well done. And next up, we're going to go straight over to Jason from Wessex. So they're kind of Dorset in the New Forest, about how they've kept their members engaged, and also how they've run one of those 8 regional events Rick was talking about earlier. They did their first regional event a week or so ago. So I'll hand over to you, Jason. I'm going to make you presenter.
Good evening, Natalie. Good evening, National Orienteers. I hope you're all... Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you, yeah, and I can see your screen.
Magnificent. It's fantastic to be in this seminar with lots of people from around the country, and I've just got a few minutes to talk to you about how Wessex is a rather small club with about 50 members. Wessex and Wimborne act as a joint club a lot of the time, and obviously, like you, probably in March after lockdown hit, we had a lot of weeks where we were stressing out about not being able to go and orienteer. In the area, Southampton actually picked up on this map run, and map run is something that's been a big part of our whole summer right into autumn. It's an app which started in Australia a few years ago. It's a free download. Map Run F is the latest version, and it basically requires clubs to have one admin that is the person that deals with Map Run website to upload maps that they're using for events. So yeah, Southampton got on with it straight away using the open orienteering format, and in by June 13th, Wessex and Wimborne had clubbed together, and we got 12 weeks events set up. So each event was a 9-day window, so it gave us loads of time to go out and compete in your own safe space for as long as you wanted within that week. And yeah, that ran all the way up to September, which was really cool. Lots of people getting involved there. And the peak of that was 68 members competing at Canford Heath, which is our local area in Western Pool. Okay, so that rocked on and then carried on for another 6 weeks, autumn. We are now in the last week of that with Avon Heath. And believe it or not, they're going to put another 13 weeks of this over the whole winter. So there's absolutely loads of chance to do map running and just going into it with your phone and printing your own maps off, see your own space, and just competing with your mates, and then contacting them through social media and email and all the other channels to find out how the competitions went. So yeah, we are going to give a donation to those guys in Australia, because we thought that as a club it was very, very valid. They have areas all over the world. If you look on their website a bit more deeply, you'll find out. And if any travellers, if anybody got the chance to travel, I'm sure you could go and check one out in one of the European countries or somewhere. But now Natalie's asked me to talk about our first big event, our trad event, post-lockdown at Godlingston and Agglestone, that we used in 2018. Last time we used it there was for the Dorset, no, was it Dorset Light, or I'm not sure. It's a big area event. But yeah,
and the question that everyone's going to ask you, Jason, is how did you secure permission on this magical National Trust site?
Right. So yeah, it comes down to relationships with the individuals on the area. This is managed by Studland, and it borders onto another area that joins even onto Wareham, Rempston. But we've used the Studland area at Knoll Beach on a number of occasions for starts. So that's over a really popular tourist spot. This was started in Burnbake, which is a campsite that we've used in past years. It's about 2 miles from Studland. So in effect, all we were doing was hosting on their heath, but the land that they own. yeah, the individuals that work within the NT are very varied across Dorset. We have other ones where we have permanent courses like Stone Down, and they're really keen on promoting it, on getting folk to come in and just use their space and bring more visitors in. I think they regard it as just all good for the trust. If you've read any of their national literature recently, you'll see that they have now a directive to bring people in for leisure and recreation as much as the mansion experience. Whereas we've probably known North National Trust as being that thing where you go and look around the big house. They really do need to try and bring it to a wider group of potential members, I think, of all different backgrounds. So that's probably part of the background of it. But yeah, wherever you are, if you have a relationship in your club with the National Trust staffer, then yeah, nurture that. And the weird thing is they do leave post, and you get a completely different set of staff. And you have to go through it all again. If you've got permanent courses, it's well worth just keeping that going to continue on, and then you can get events like this. So we did it along the guidelines of BOF that made sure that all pre-entries were via Fabian. We acknowledged that we mustn't attend if we were, or a member of my house had COVID symptoms and so on. And they were the extra elements on your entry for Fabian. And we confirmed we read the BOF Code of Conduct and agreed to abide by it. We used self-selected start blocks. And that photo that Natalie's put on that first slide there, it shows you a pretty good idea of the distancing available to us in that flat space before you got into the rugged consort area. We had 228 entries, 218 ran in the end, and it was actually a beautiful day. On the day that it was scheduled for, it was Storm Alex. So unfortunately, we had to send out rapidly via comms, okay, we're going to postpone, because the stream crossings would have been ridiculous for people to try and get by each other. They wouldn't have been able to pass safely. So we did postpone, but then we got the most beautiful Sunday after that. And you can see a couple of the comments from folk there that I've put in. And yeah, it is tough. The planning was tough. It's a tough area. It's tough country, a lot of bog, tussock, but it's really challenging. And then I think people are just really glad to get back into the challenge of it again. Couple other things of managing it. We had radios that even though the start was about a K and a bit away from the assembly area, we were talking to each other on radios for that. We also use WhatsApp a lot to be able to communicate rapidly. We had a car park system of loads of space. The car park was inside the Birnbeck campsite. They wanted a £5 per person at first, and we managed to talk them down to £3.50 each, which got us, that was probably our biggest expenditure on the event, actually, the car parking. As you often know, if an event can't have good car parking, it often can't go ahead these days. So that was obviously a winner for us as well. Just moving, congratulations. Yeah, lots of space for people to get up to the walk to the start and have a warm up, and felt that we managed it like we do most of our events really well with teamwork, and loads of club members headed out to have a run and help out as well. So I'm gonna keep moving, just hoping it won't be another long before the next opportunity. Yeah, we have got some more regional events coming up, and we'll be selecting the areas again carefully for them, so that we can invite as many people down as possible, as I hope you can from your clubs.
Yeah, and the challenge, yeah, I was just going to say, Jason, that obviously the challenge for other people who've got trying to put on similar events and getting like a brick wall from their, for example, National Trust people, it must be so frustrating, but maybe it would help to share examples like this one that Jason's talking about, just to show that other sites have been, you know, a bit more receptive, and how effective the organisation has been, which has meant that, you know, everyone's been safe and everything. So it's just hopefully these kind of examples will be helpful for others to kind of have those discussions.
Yeah, definitely, and feel free to pick off things off the website and you know, request anything you want if you want to get in touch. There's plenty of contact on the Wessex website there. It is really a case where the National Trust want to promote things through all their social media channels, and we do use Twitter and Facebook to an extent. We're getting a bit better on it. So future plans, watch the website and watch the space for the next events coming up. Our Wessex Night League has started last night, which I competed in and 31 others competed in, so that was a safe spaced night race. That's obviously an event, not just an activity, so we're registering those with BOF as well, and that brings out the keen runners and lots of military to do that. So good to hear you, Colin, and I look forward to hearing Phil and the others, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Just a quick one. Just
yeah,
just for those that don't know, how big's your club? What kind of membership is it?
We're about 50 members. Yeah, not big at all. About 50.
Yeah, and you're doing what I love to hear is that you're carrying on with your virtual orienteering league into the winter, which is what I like to hear. And that leads us nicely. Thank you very much, Jason. Much appreciated. That leads us nicely into our next session, which is from Phil from Cleveland Orienteering Club, and Phil's going to talk about his experience of converting to Map Run. So I'll just get over to Phil so we don't see Jason do his online shopping, because we can still see his screen. Right, I clicked over to you now, Phil. There we are, lovely. We can see your screen.
Good evening, everybody. Phil Batts. Tonight I'm representing both Clock and Army Orienteering. I'd never heard of Map Run until I saw the advert for the British Orienteering webinar about the technology. Got to say, I was more than blown away by the idea of it. So the next day I asked Pat for an admin account for both Clock and Army Orienteering and began my journey, which has culminated in us having, between Clock and BAOC in the Northeast, about 33 virtual courses to date. So these are the items that I'm going to talk about: things to do with maps, how to fix them in OCAD, my experience of Google Earth, what my current setup process is, what my current event process, which is mainly Military League North, and some future ideas I'm playing with. So as an example, one of my early maps that was drawn on a scan of an OS paper map, if you see the purple arrow, that's just one part of it that is that far out when it was put into Google Earth. So that obviously would have looked ridiculous when you were looking at the results and people were looking at where they went on their track. We then had various issues with georeferencing. This relatively new map was out very strangely by about 4 kilometers. Not sure why, but it was relatively easy to fix. Then I had one that when I opened it, it opened in the African Ocean because it was on the wrong coordinate system. One thing that's a very recent development in OCAD is the ability to automatically introduce into an OCAD map georeferenced satellite images. So when you've got a map that isn't sitting in the right place in Google Earth, you can add images like that around the periphery plus some in the center. And when you look in closely, you can see where that inside corner of that building should really be there. So it has a tool in it called rubber sheeting, where you can specify this, move this point to here, move this point to here, and you transform the map. It's never perfect, but it's an awful lot better than it was, and it will mean when competitors look at their track in the results service, it looks like they're not running through buildings all the time. Moving on to Google Earth, until the webinar, I had no idea that with the sidebar in Google Earth, you could use it as a file manager. So essentially, that's currently my setup of map files and courses based around towns up here, and how I'm using it to manage both the map file and the course file, both of which are used by MapRun. I started off by planning my courses as normal in Purple Pen, and then doing a GPX export out of Purple Pen and importing it into Google Earth. But with the maps having the problems that I've shown you, that was just a painful experience of fixing all those elements that weren't in the right place. So what I've decided to do is create an all controls map in Google Earth, and then create individual courses from that all controls file, which I'll explain to you how I do in a minute. So that is one of Clock's it was our first event after lockdown, on the 2nd of August. And that is the all controls listing for that map. And you'll see there that when Clock asked me to do this, I realised that to get a long course, the map was nowhere near big enough. So I used that new feature of OCAD to tile in additional parts of the town just with satellite images, just to give me a bigger area. And interestingly, talking to some of the competitors who came from other clubs, a lot of them had come just to experience what that composite map was like. Once I've done the all controls, then this is the difficult bit with Google Earth. You would then have to copy and paste that control listing and then edit it to be the long. And in all the courses I've done, I've never done one without making a mistake. So my current setup process: ensure my map is geo-referenced and at this year's MAG rotation, just to make it sit in Google Earth properly. Create a KMZ map from OCAD. The KMZ map is what's used by MapRun, or use Ollie's Open Orienteering map. And I found having an OpenStreetMap editing account very useful, because when somebody goes out and runs around Gisborough, they can come back to me and say, Phil, there's a map, there's a path that goes between the cemetery and that street, and then I can edit the OpenStreetMap, and overnight those edits appear in Ollie's program. I plan in Purple Pen. The thing I've learned, make absolutely no chance of people visiting the finish early, because they will. I then visit the area with an all controls map, and the device that I use is a Garmin GPS Map 64. The main reason for that is it's got a much bigger antenna than either a smart watch or my phone. So I find that much more accurate. I record all the control sites, latitude and longitudes in the Garmin. It's basically a one button press as you walk around the area. I record all the map issues. I use a Garmin program called Basecamp to export the waypoints, which are controls, and the track as a pair of GPX files, and then import them into Google Earth. I fix the map if I need to. Then I create a check sites course, which is a feature of MapRun to allow you to do controlling in effect. And I send a pin code for that course and an all controls map to the controller for them to go round and do a sanity check on my madness. And then, as I said to you, I create each course in Google Earth from that all controls set of latitude and longitudes. Then I get my wife to sit behind me with the paper control descriptions from Purple Pen and read out the control codes in order on each course to show me where I've made mistakes. As I've said, never yet have I done one without making a mistake. I then create the courses on the MapRun server and we're good to go. So current MLN event process using MapRun, I pin protect each course in an event, or if it's a BAOC virtual course, we use a Facebook appointment system, so we only have one family group every half an hour turning up at the start. So I issue those pins to people when their time is available for them to turn up in Catterick and have their run. I've learned to have the pin code expire at the last start time because otherwise people can't see their results. The reason I use a pin code is so that people can't look at the course once the first start has happened if they're not starting for 3 hours, because the soldiers will cheat if I give them the chance. I've also learned to have a really simple little test course available in the assembly area where you can see a start, a control and the finish from the briefing area, and that just lets people check that their technology is working. You need to be prepared for those people that have read nothing, done nothing with their phone, don't understand what's going on, and you need to be able to do that on both iPhone and Android platforms. Usually 50% of the people who come have not read anything about setting up for MapRun. Issue the pin at -5 minutes. Have a unique start kite and first control for each start lane. Usually with MLN, we're using 2 start lanes for 5 courses. So future ideas, always cite a virtual orienteering set of courses with their start and finish near a busy public space such as a supermarket. It allows us to blend in, it allows us to go and use the toilets, they go and use the cafe in the supermarket, buy a sandwich for lunch, and it helps make it less obvious. Encourage the participants to run in normal sports kit and not club branded kit. Once again, just keep it below the radar. When visiting the area for the first time, I'm now intending on recording all viable control sites on my Garmin device. And then I've got a cloud of latitude and longitudes that I can use in the future. And then use the Open Orienteering Map service to create these improved OMAPs via Ollie's system. And we aim to do that over the winter in all of the towns in the Cleveland Orienteering Club area, and then have a set of courses, a very short, medium and long, available for the foreseeable future. I hope that's been of interest, and if there's anybody who doesn't understand some of the techno geek stuff there, get in touch.
Well, firstly, what an absolutely fantastic assimilation of new information technology that you and obviously Clock have shown there to get all those from zero to hero and get all those things up. So a couple of people have asked about where you do your map runs, because obviously you do yours primarily in urban areas, don't you? Like you said about the supermarkets and everything.
No, not always. The one that's on the screen now is a new forest park that's the roundabout on the left hand side is the A66 bypass around Darlington. And if you look from where number 21 and the finish leading down an old railway line, at the bottom of it is a village with a pub that allows us to park in their car park and use their garden and go and have a cup of tea. So we're not only doing urban events, and as the guy who's going to follow on from me, I personally believe that this works in forested areas as well.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, that does take us quite nicely. Thank you very much, Phil, for that. It takes us quite nicely into Martin from SROC, South Ribble Orienteering Club, which is based in Lancashire. about a kind of similar story about how the club avoided coming to a kind of grinding halt by getting to grips with the virtual orienteering course. So I'll make you presenter now, Martin. And there were a couple of general virtual orienteering course questions that came in, which I'll leave till the end of Martin's one, and then obviously Martin and Phil, etc., can come in and answer some of those. So yeah, welcome, Martin. Thanks for joining us. We can see your screen.
Right, yes, I remembered to unmute myself.
That's
Right,
true.
is that okay? Can you
can hear
see
you.
the screen? Good, okay. So I wanted to kick off just by saying that this is not a talk on a brilliant way of doing things. It's just a description of the way that we've done it. I'm sure there'll be some things that you like and some things that you don't like about this, and we are learning from everyone else. And also, Natalie, I'm conscious of time. Just give me a 2-minute warning when you want me to wrap up, as it were. But I'm not intending to go on. But at least I can cover any other points which are there. What the outline is there. It's what we have done and why. It's the challenges that we met. Some bullet points, not much of a discussion really on resistance that people may have to doing MapRun events, and then a quick summary. So I need to go down now. There we go. Okay, yeah, our first learning experience was turning our 3 permanent orienteering courses into virtual orienteering courses. I'm not really going to say anything any more about that, but that was how we sort of learnt MapRun technique. Thanks to lots of help from Pat McLeod at North Gloucester. And we developed a small team of testers who went out and joyfully sort of tested this before we went live. So that kept people amused up until sort of whenever we started our series, which I think was September, our autumn series. We changed our autumn series from SI events to MapRun events. Our autumn series was normally a series of 3 events. They were basically catties, come and try it, but there was with a technical course for our club members and anyone else who wanted to come along. And typically we would get sort of 50 people, maybe 20 to 25 of our own members and a similar number of newcomers. So we had something like a long yellow and a technical. We basically decided we would abandon this because we couldn't handle the newcomers with social distancing, and places that the first 2 events were normally held in parks, wooded parks, albeit in our towns and cities, but it's still sort of countryside parks. We just didn't feel, with the numbers of people that were using these parks nowadays during COVID and after lockdown, that we were going to get permissions for that either. And then we thought about SI events, and we thought, well, if we're opening up for an hour or 2 hours, what's a point in all the effort of sort of getting everybody to one point, but then keeping them all apart, and then telling them that they've got to go away again without talking to anyone and interacting. And we just felt, well, if we can't have the social interaction, we can't have it, and we may as well sort of open up the events over a much longer time period. So we decided that we'd use the best areas we could get and basically open it up for members and other members of other clubs. So there was no sort of catty ethos there. And there would be one sort of yellow standard type course for people in the club who wanted to do that, and for any newcomers who did want to do it. And then at least one other technical course, sometimes more than one. But we felt that middle style courses sort of suited a lot of our areas. So that's basically what we've done. I think we've now got five events, and that's one of the things that we sort of discovered, is that map runs are actually so easy to put on. They require very little effort from just a few people, that we can have more events, and if we're using SI events. The map and the entry is free. Maps are downloaded from the BOF Permanent Orienteering Course portal, or they can be obtained from email by the series coordinator. But most people download them at the vast majority. They're open for this 16-day period, which they basically open on a Saturday, which means that they're open that weekend, then they're open all the way through to the following weekend, and then all the way through to the final Sunday. Now they're open, that's from the point of view of scoring points in our informal league that we have. They actually will stay open after that, and they do stay open after that, because there's no point in taking them down. And we certainly got people who doing them after that sort of official window. There's no pin code on the MapRun app. There's no point in the system that we run. Anyone can download it whenever they want, basically. We've got a simple age-related league. There's 3 age groupings for both females and for males. No prizes. It's just a fun thing. But we felt when we set it up that it would help sort of create a sort of sense of competition, and I think that has happened. Publicity, well, you can see the publicity ways we do that, and all are in well-wooded parks and forest areas. The challenges that we've come, permissions, not surprisingly. We found local authorities, we had good relationships with them because we often had POCs in there, if not in that particular park, but in another one. So they knew us, and they were all working, they weren't furloughed, and almost by return, we were getting, yeah, please go ahead. You know, we'd love you to do this. We'll share your publicity info on Facebook, etc. I think, as previous speaker has said, you know, the relationship there was sort of key to it. National Trust, completely different. I mean, I know they're going through their difficult times, but one of the comments was, well, there's only one of me working there, one of us working now. There used to be 7. I haven't got time to do all the paperwork. You know, I mean, that probably says something about National Trust, because all we got from the local authorities was, yes, go ahead. You know, they didn't want anything else filled in. And again, Forestry England, the first reaction was, sorry, no events for the foreseeable future. But we had a personal relationship with one of the people, and once it was explained, not just in an email, but verbally, what we wanted to do, it was, oh, well, you don't actually need a formal permission for that. You know, he just sent us an email saying, you know, keep out of these areas, basically, and, you know, have a good time. So that was refreshing. We've heard of about the georeferencing of OCAD maps. Clearly, we've had the same issues, that all our maps are OCAD maps based on traditional survey methods. We found that some were absolutely spot on in terms of the real world position. In other areas, some features were quite a long way from where they really were. And it's funny, we've been using them for years and no one ever realized. But you see the feature and you don't think about it, do you? So sometimes we've had to tweak the OCAD map to bring it into the real world position. On one instance, we've actually redrawn the map because it was a very complicated ornamental type park, and instead of circular features, we had sort of oval features which clearly shouldn't be oval. GPS reception, all of our courses have most of the controls in woods. So our experience is that conifers are very good GPS reception. Surprisingly, I didn't think it would be. Wet tree canopies degrades the signal somewhat, but if you've got a good device, it's still going to be okay. Broadleaf trees, particularly sycamores, generally worse, and obviously when it's wet, then worse. By and large, the MapRun and the GPS will still work in these areas. We do have two park areas where the GPS is just atrocious, both in the trees and in the open, and I have no idea why, but we're not going to be able to use those because the track is just all over the place.
Just a quick 2-minute, if that's all right, Martin. And while I'm here, can I just ask, Jeremy said, you've said you've opened your courses for 16 days.
Yeah.
How did you enforce that?
Well, we don't. Okay. I mean, they're just open from the point of view of scoring points in the informal league. Thereafter,
league results.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are ways in MapRun to close the course. You can do it quite easily if you want to with a time limit, but we don't do that. So perhaps closing the course was the wrong way. Right, almost finished. People have different issues with GPS devices. Most phones are very good. Some phones are very poor, and it doesn't depend upon the cost of the phone. I'm told that MapRun G, which I don't have, is even better because basically I guess you're just paying for a brilliant GPS device and not all the other stuff you get in a phone. We've used MapRun in parts of the Northwest Junior Squad for coaching, and we're going to do another session with them. And I can tell you it's absolutely excellent because it teaches people to run and look for the feature rather than run and look for kites. And I think that's a really good exercise when we're doing these virtual orienteering courses with map runs. It does really make you look for the features and navigate properly. Okay, I'm not going to. I was intending to go over all of this, but there is. Our first event had 25 people take part. Second event, which was very geographically close, at 50. So we've got a good increase in pickup. I think so various ways of overcoming the resistance to using GPS orienteering. But I think it's here to stay. That would be my message. And it just like SI, came and it's here to stay. And my overall messages are there. I'll leave you to read that. My message would be basically keep things simple, everything that you do simple, and it's a fantastic device. The biggest ongoing problem is permissions. But my final point, I would agree, Natalie, is that I think that although as a club we should be getting back to SI events now, I would like us to continue to run MapRun events as well because they're so simple and easy. That's it.
And from my perspective, what I was thinking for the next exciting webinar was to be a session on MapRun G and have a few examples of people that have used it, what Garmin's they need. For example, I've got a Garmin 4 on a 220, which is too inept to be able to use MapRun G. So it's either an excuse for a new Garmin watch or we don't know what's going to happen. So yes, that'll hopefully be in the coming weeks. But thanks a lot, Martin. It's really great to see how, like you said in your slides, it's kind of brought your club together and enabled you to give you purpose and enabled you to continue doing something over the spell, which is fab. So thanks a lot. And then lastly, there's a few questions just for you and Phil. just about whether you'd had any experience of using any other apps like the Usinglo app, or whether you've just stuck with the map run.
I haven't used anything other than map run, no.
Yeah.
No, and neither have I.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions that have come in about things to do with risk assessments and health and safety for people doing map run. And we've got a britishorienteering.org.uk/box page, which actually talks about some of that. So I won't go into it in detail now, but there's stuff that will kind of outline. And basically, if you're doing a map run that isn't an organised event or activity, then people are doing it at their own risk. But yeah, I can go into, if anyone's got any further questions on that, feel free to contact me, but I'll send through the link to our webpage for people to have a gander. I'm going to hand over to Jules, because what I thought it'd be really good to hear about is an example of how virtual orienteering courses can be used to kind of engage not just the orienteering community, but those outside of it. So it's something for clubs to kind of think about, you know, going forward. I know it's difficult with not having newcomers, but it's just how engaging virtual orienteering courses can be as a kind of come and try it. So I'll hand over to Jules now for 5 minutes, if that's all right, Jules.
Oh, how are you? Can you hear me? Can you see my screen, all that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll keep this quick because I can see the time there. Anybody listening in Northern Ireland will be laughing at me saying I'm going to keep it quick, but I will. So I just want to talk to you quickly about our initiative October Outdoors, which has been funded by the Outdoor Partnership. I'm the development officer here, so I suppose it's also funded by Sport NI with my time going into it, and of course lots of the club time as well. It's 4 weeks of adventurous orienteering challenges, we're calling it, across 3 council areas. So how it works is people register by sending me an email, and then that's them on the list. Each Sunday evening they get their map for the week ahead, and they get the instructions for Map Run F, and they can go out and do that course anytime in that week at their own time and their own pace. I suppose what's been a bit different about it is that I think people have really bought into it as a challenge. When they're sending that email to register, they feel like they're signing up to something, and they're getting that communication from me every Sunday, checking in and encouraging them for the week ahead. So it has been very admin heavy from that side. I would probably do it differently again, but I do think that's really added to the program. So I'm just going to show you some of the communications around it. I cannot stress enough that I'm speaking completely from a community engagement point of view, and I know absolutely nothing about the technical side, but thankfully we've got the club members for that. So this is the flyer we did initially on a brilliant app called, or a brilliant website called Canva, which I highly recommend. Nat, I think you need a webinar on Canva. So yeah, that was the sort of general poster, and then as well as that we had specific posters for each council area outlining where their map was going to be for that week. So what's maybe happened is somebody has seen, oh, there's something happening in Bangor where I live, that's great, and they've got the first week but loved it, and they've kept going through it for the rest of the weeks. We had a big buy-in from the council. You can see the we've got the use of their logo on the posters as well, which gives people that bit of recognition and bit of extra trust, I think, too. So that's been really nice. And the council have been really good at promoting it, all the areas. So that's definitely helped as well. Just to give you a wee insight into how it works in the emails, they would get their initial email to say they've registered. Don't know why that's taking a wee minute there. Okay, is it blank for you guys as well?
Yes.
Yeah, right. We'll skip that then. Anyway, they get an email saying what it's all about, which is basically also on the LVO website here. They also get attachments like picture instructions for Map Run F, which is available on the virtual orienteering landing page on the British Orienteering website. So they get that sort of thing attached as well. They would get map symbols to have a look at if it was their first go, and sort of ideas for MapRunF and how they can troubleshoot any bother they might be having with it. And then on their weekly Sunday email, they get more info and, you know, things like where to park, anything to look out for, and also their map attached. So I'll just show you an example of one of the courses we've got, the sort of level we're going for. So we stick to an orange course. So here's a look at, I think this is this week's in the Armagh Banbridge Craigavon area. I can hear all your wee cogs turning there, trying to plan your route while you're having a quick glance at it.
Yeah, they all want to nip over to Northern Ireland and get cracking on it.
It looks good, doesn't it? So, because it's sort of aimed at, we weren't specifically aiming at club members, but I suppose, or newcomers, but I suppose keeping it at that orange level. Some club members have been able to get out and have a bit of a runabout when they're missing orienteering, and then we really have had a big percentage is brand new people. So I'll show you some of the numbers now and how it's worked. If I can find where I put those. Yeah. So if you have a look, we have had big numbers, especially for here, for people actually registering. So this was by the end of week 2. We're into week 3 now, and we're up to another 110 on top of that. So we're up to 664 registered. So I suppose it's that idea that you throw a big net and you hope you catch some, and we have caught some. So the app users here, you can see this is when we go and look at the MapRunF results, that's where we're getting these numbers from. So I think it's really important to remember for this that for the most of it, we have one person registering, so it might be a parent and they're planning to go out with their family. So I would guess that whenever we try and capture it in a post-program survey, the actual participant numbers will be maybe 3 or 4 times this, because generally it is one person out with a phone and the rest of the gang running about with them too. So yeah, we're really pleased with the numbers, but it's definitely something we'll try and capture more info on, and we'll put together a bit of a report to let you have a look at it. So going pretty well so far. Another thing that we've got running with it is a photo competition, and that just encourages people. I love taking the photos out at events usually, but obviously this isn't an event and I'm not there when they're out doing it. So we need to get them to take the photos for us so we can be sharing them and talking about it on Facebook. So we just ask them to take photos, upload them to the club Facebook page with these hashtags, and then there is a prize up for grabs. It's a £20 voucher for an outdoor shop. The only other thing I wanted to show you then was a quick look at the club Facebook page. So basically this program's been launched now for about 28 days, where it says here, and you'll see the massive increase in engagement on the Facebook page, and that is from the likes of the councils sharing the posts, and then people sharing the council post, people sharing our posts about it. And I think as well, with our extended half term, people are looking for something to do that hasn't been cancelled, because everything else seems to be cancelled, and thankfully this is something can very much still operate and will continue to be able to operate over the winter and beyond, regardless of restrictions. Well, we would hope. And I'll just also give you a wee look at some of the photos people have been posting to the page. So you can see here down this one side, there's people, these guys were out because it was Hollywood, which is quite a nice area. They were actually out in Dickiebos this week. Lots of nice photos of good scenery and blue skies. I don't know when that was because there wasn't any of those today. Some really nice detailed photos up close, and then some up kids' noses. So a real mixed bag of pictures, but that's good. So it's all just generating that sort of sense of you're part of something bigger, even though you're just out maybe as you're in your bubble doing it yourself. And we're keeping the courses live each week and encouraging them to move on to the next course the following week. So it sort of really feels like you're moving through the challenge and you're developing each week as well. So yeah, so far so good, but the program's still live, so we should have more info for you after into November. The plan for November then is to make all the courses live and more on a landing page on the website, so people can be directed there and work their way through them. Hopefully they'll be allowed to move into other council areas, as obviously with orienteering you want to encourage people to be willing to pack up on a Saturday and take a good drive to run for an event. So that's the sort of next step of what we want to encourage. And as you all know, the real challenge will be then the transfer into becoming part of the club and club events, but that's sort of down the line, and hopefully something we'll be able to report back to you on.
Yeah, well, I think that's really helpful, Jules, because it just goes to show, like, you know, once we think about a bit wider and how orienteering and virtual orienteering can be used as a fantastic tool to actually get people in the community out and active, especially people that are under, you know, various restrictions, but they can still get out independently. So I think hopefully that's been useful, and I think we've only gone 10 minutes over, which is actually quite good considering the amount of content and people we had giving examples. So there's a couple of other things I wanted to talk through, but we haven't had time to. So Sal Chaffee and Mike Godfrey from DVO have also sent me through a presentation about their examples of what they've been up to. So what I'll do is share that around with the information to this webinar so everyone can access it online. Things like how they're thinking about using virtual orienteering course to create map runs with around 25 decorated swans in Burton-on-Trent, and how they've created, you know, 17 courses and got their members busy at lockdown, about how they've kind of mentored, their mapping officer has mentored people. So it's not only about getting people out doing the orienteering, but they've mentored people to become planners and mappers and stuff. So it's actually thinking about how it's helped in terms of volunteering as well. So let's just call it a night. I want to thank everyone who's kind of stayed with us. And Jules, don't do any shopping or anything dodgy, because we can still see your screen. But yes, thanks everyone. Really appreciate you joining us. This session will be sent round as a recorded link, and also all the attachments. But do feel free to contact me if you want to discuss anything further. And I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you soon in a Map Run G webinar coming to you soon. So thanks everyone. Thanks to all the speakers as well from all the clubs, really appreciated. So there's no responses from anyone, so I assume everyone's either fallen asleep or they're getting their tea ready. So that's what I'll head off and do. So I'll shut it down now. So thanks everyone.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.